She knows they need to do better. There's 80 people, 80 full-time health officials who are working in this exemptions unit. Clearly it needs to be blown up and they need to start again because their record is appalling. When you look at the hypocrisy and the inconsistencies and the double standards that have emerged within Queensland Health during this pandemic, it's appalling. And we've seen so many examples. We saw, young Memphis last week, 9 weeks without seeing his mum and dad. We saw, the little girl in Melbourne who was marooned down there in Victoria, unable to see her mum. And I said this early in the week, Kieran, and I'll say it again. Until these particular instances hit the press or hit Sky News, unfortunately, Queensland Health shows an appalling lack of compassion and empathy. And I think when we look back on this pandemic, we will say that Queensland Health failed spectacularly when it came to looking at these individual cases. Because, here's a little boy, 4 months old, goes into hospital. He's much more likely to pick something up there than he is at home. And let's not forget, they live 250 kilometres out west. There hasn't been a COVID case within Cooey of them. So it doesn't make any sense. And I think Jeanette Young needs to be much more proactive when it comes to exercising how these particular exemption units do their thing.
Yeah, and I've got to say, it's certainly very stark, this, they're talking about the balance between compassion and public safety. Well, it is imbalanced at the moment, and this latest example just highlights that. We've seen it in other states as well, Pete, where the compassion is lost in this single-minded focus on the virus, and some tragedies have unfolded. Personal tragedies have unfolded, and we reflect on this today on Are You OK Day, of all days, when mental health is front and centre. But that's what we increasingly have to talk about, isn't it? The shadow pandemic.
Indeed, indeed. And mental health is such a big issue. And, we implore everyone at Sky News to ask their best mate, ask their friends and families today, are you OK? Because it is a tough time. And look, I acknowledge, Kieran, that it is difficult for governments to balance the fiscal side of this particular pandemic with the health imperatives. And there's no doubt that Queensland has done very well when it comes to the health narrative around keeping its people safe. But, looking back on those cases and looking back on the lack of empathy, Australians are entitled to ask the question, what do these bureaucrats, what is their criteria? What protocols do they actually adopt when they make these decisions? And, the Premier can be outraged and can say they need to do better, Kieran. But, they have consistently failed to properly, provide the right advice.
And as you highlighted with your report about the NRL families, the lack of consistency as well across the board, where if you know the right people, you're sweet. And
Kieran, we also saw it just a few days ago when, our diggers have been prevented from coming back from Dubai. And of course, that was driven by the mother of one of those soldiers who said, why is it that wives and girlfriends of footy players can come into a Queensland and be given quarantine when, in fact, our guys haven't been actioned? So, look, there's a lot to do in this space. But, on this day, this Mental Health Day, Are You OK Day, let's make sure that people are looking after each other.